folks, it's Chris Gordon here for DJB Productions, and welcome back to another episode of Unsung Heroes. And I'm extremely excited because I know you've all been waiting for this, and it's happening. It's part 2 of my discussion with the amazing Scott McGill. Let's bring him on.
Good afternoon. It's morning for you, right?
Yes, it's morning
right,
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're over. So we are with you from the Philly area, but you're in England.
I'm contacting you from Brighton and Hove. The English Channel is that away about 2 minutes walk.
Oh, wow.
You can see it from here.
All right, so you can just hop on and go over to France for dinner.
It's basically the Cape May of England.
Except
if such a thing exists.
Except, okay, we can go to Jersey to Delaware. You can go from England to France.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's basically, Dieppe is over there. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, this is, for history, folks, this is part of the place where Dunkirk, the evacuation, they were getting people in and out.
That's right.
Boats, anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So how is the family?
Well, we're okay. Declan is out. My son is out with his respite worker, and Meredith is out somewhere. She just kind of went, I'm going to go out. So that I'm
going to go out back. Because there's going to be some nerd talk going on here.
Correct. So yeah. You're going to be talking with Chris about boring things. So I'm going to go leave. Right. That's it.
Well, we were talking off camera about this before, and I had to bring it up because you were talking about my V's. And I was saying earlier, my favorite picture that Meredith had posted was her shopping with Michael Schenker. How cool is that?
It is kind of cool. And just to let everybody know, we live in the area that we live in. If you're into, Chris and I were talking late 70s rock or 80s. A lot folks from the Scorpions, like Schenker and Uli John Roth had a place here. Herman Rarebell, I think, still has a place, and even like the UFO guys, like Phil Mogg.
Phil Mogg is there.
He's over here. They're all in this area. Jeff Beck lives not too far. Gary Moore used to live here. Gary Moore is buried not too far from me, and used to frequent the music stores. We were just talking. And we had come back from the States in 2016. We went to the shopping mall for, like what we would call a mall. Americans would call a mall like a shopping center. And it was 10 a.m. and there was Michael Schenker. So, of course, we got it. And by the way, my Meredith will literally go Schenker sighting. He's in Starbucks. Schenker, and I'll get like Schenker sighting. I'm on the bus with the guy.
That's amazing.
He's in the area, and he's a very nice guy. He's very nice.
Yeah, I've heard that he's an absolute gem of a human being. What is it about that area? I mean, you just listed iconic players, which of course I'm going to put you in that category too, because
you're nice.
I'm a nice guy, but I'm being honest. I dig. Well, I'm not a nice guy, but you've always been that guy. So what is it about that area that you think really attracts that?
It's a good question. We're only about an hour and something from London. So we're not far from the epicenter of the business, really. So we're not too far. Wow. And it's, and I work in London, so I commute a bit. And it's a seaside town. Brighton is, I don't know, even what was that tune by Queen, Brighton Rock and all? I mean,
Brighton Rock,
it's all up and down here. People like to come here and vacation. It's like London by the sea, really. It's a small city, but yet, it's the shoreline is here, but it's a rock beach, Chris. It's like an old school, like you would see in history, programs like, there's the English shore. Yeah, it's the old school rocks. But people like it here. I mean, like I said, property is at a premium, etc. But you will see. I didn't tell you. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd is over here. No, I'm not kidding.
I'm not. I'm sure you're not kidding.
No, in fact, my kid, we were out. I didn't tell you this. I'll tell you this now. So we were out with my son Declan. He liked the trampoline. This is years ago. Okay. So we go to these trampolines. We know the woman named Keely used to own them. Keely and Jason. So we go down there, and boing, boing, boing. We're trampolining, and there's a young girl next to Declan trampolining. All of a sudden, this guy walks up in a parka, dad shoes, those kind of like slippery dad shoes and stuff. Right. And it's David Gilmour. And we're just watching. And I turned to Meredith. I'm like, so what's happening is we're watching our son. And I'm telling her this. We're watching our son trampoline. And the guy from Pink Floyd is right there that we used to listen to when we were kids. So
Wow.
that's the Dark Side of the Moon guy, and he's right there. But he looks like a granddad version. But yeah. I don't know what it's about the area. It's great. Yeah.
That sounds it. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And okay, so going back a little bit,
yeah,
because when we last spoke, we spoke so much about the Sindoli experience, and you're coming up in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to hop around a little bit here, but what brought you to England? What took you there?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a really good question. What happened was I was teaching at the University of the Arts a few days a week in Philadelphia and was loving it. And Meredith and I had met. We got married rather quickly, and things took off, and we were living still in New Jersey, and yeah, we'll cut in and out. And I was still playing and doing my thing and all, and I just kind of got it into my head. I'm like, I want to get to the next level. I could use some more money. I'm doing okay, but I could really use some security and some more money. And I'm just going to start sending my CV resume out to anywhere,
Okay.
And I had heard that there was a scene in the United Kingdom for popular music education, that it was bigger over here, so the Berkeley kind of thing was happening more over here in a sense. So I sent out a resume, and I was just sending them, and somebody got back to me. This guy, got back to me and said, "Hey, I like your resume. Let's talk." One thing led to another. I came over. We started talking about positions, and he said, "Oh, I think I might have a position for you where it'll be mostly administrative, but you'll be teaching too." And I was like, "That's wonderful." And that's how it happened.
That's great.
And we had just had Declan. I mean, Declan came over here. He was only 8 months old. So all he really knows is the United Kingdom.
Wow.
Even though he was born in the States, he was born in Voorhees, but basically he's an English kid,
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way,
in a nutshell.
I saw your wedding photos, and that was at a castle.
That was in Northern Ireland.
We
got married. Yeah, we got married in the UK, technically in the UK again, but it's Ireland. So we got married in a castle. Yeah, we rented. Folks, if you're looking to do this, I recommend it. This was an announced elopement. So no family, no yelling, no 30 grand for a catering place, none of that garbage.
No yelling. I love that.
No screaming and going, "Who the hell are you? I don't know who you are," and you were invited. And no getting looked at and all that kind of stuff. We did 2 weeks in Northern Ireland. This is supposed to be a guitar podcast.
I know. But,
and we're talking, what's great about this, Chris, is like we're talking about like how to get married and all that.
Well, it's a bonus.
It is a bonus, but we did 2 weeks for not even a fraction of the cost in Ireland, for a fraction of the cost of doing your catering hall nonsense.
Wow. And of course, it was an announced elopement, and that's what ours was too. Mary and I did the same thing, but we didn't go to Ireland, which is what we wanted to do. We were in Delco, so there you go.
Whatever, it's the best way to do it.
It is the best way to do it, and I agree with you that there's none of that extraneous stuff. Because I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm not going to belabor this point, but I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of the times when weddings are planned, it ends up being about the people who are coming to the wedding.
Correct. And not about the organizers who are paying for it or whatever.
It's like, let's just do this thing. Correct. And then we'll have a party later. Yeah, so
that's it. Good man.
So you now before, because I want to go back, I'm going to jump around again a little bit. And obviously, I want to get back to where you're teaching now, and I definitely want to talk about some of these publications that you've come out with, which are mind blowing to me. Now, so after the Sindoli thing, I know that you graduated from Temple, but your musical excursions at this point, I'm going to start with, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But was Phineas Gage before the Hand Farm, or was it coinciding with?
It's a great question. And in fact, those two albums, we found them on in their entirety. Found them on YouTube. So in fact, I still stay in touch with a couple of guys in that group. It's a good question. What happened was this: I had the hand farm running from '90. As soon as I graduated, it was going nowhere. We talked, it's like it was going nowhere. So we just recorded the stuff at Joe DeLuca's place at Why Me. I didn't think it was going anywhere. The internet comes in, so it's dial up. I found a label that was interested. At the same time, somebody said to me where we were rehearsing, they said, hey, there's this guy, Chris Busby, who was in a band called Echolin, and they broke up and they were on Sony, and he's getting his own thing together. I've got his phone number. I think you might be a good fit. And I spoke to him, or it's something like that.
Right.
And I said, okay, that sounds good. And I said, well, let me go check out the Echolin thing. So I was like, okay, so, it kind of sounds like Gentle Giant. And there's good songs, and this sounds kind of cool. All right, So I contact him, and he says, no, this is kind of why all the other thing died. It was interesting, like the hand farm thing. Those guys they fell off, Chris. I mean, these guys had to make a living. And the bass player, Kevin, was like, look, I got an offer to do a cover band. He was in some big cover band called, what was it? Slippery and the New Generation or whatever that was. They were doing like 200 dates a year. So he's gone. I got another bass player named Matt in. We barely got the material together, and this thing came in just in time. So he goes, why don't you come over? And there's a guy in the area named Chris Ike, who I'm still friends with, really great bass player, who's in the band too. But it wasn't really a band. So he goes, it was a solo album. Now it's a band, whatever. Long story short, went to his place. We wrote two tunes right there. It was me, Chris on keyboards, Chris Ike on bass, and John, Chris's brother, on drums. And we already wrote 2 tunes. Okay. So it was like, hey, let's just do this. It was really happening. And then we got Laura on vocals. So what happened was that was happening in terms of live playing. And there was a big buzz on it in the prog community. And it was kind of new in the internet too. Right. So I was doing that. And then the hand farm thing got released, I think, either a little before or a little after the first Phineas Gage album. So they're kind of like this, 1970, 1997, whatever it was.
Right.
I did 2 albums with Phineas Gage. So there's one called More Once More in 97, one called 1 Inch of the Fall in 99.
That's the one I know.
Okay. The first one you might like. I don't know. I'll hip you to that one too if you like the second one. I think the first one is even, I like it even a little better maybe, but the second one's okay. And then I kind of left that with Chris, the bass player, and that's when we got the record deal to do Ripe.
Yes.
With Ken Golden.
Right.
So that's how that happened. So together-ish.
Oh, that's interesting. So there was actually, Ripe came about almost as an outsource of Phineas.
I was already writing tunes for that, and I had leftovers from the hand farm.
Oh, okay.
That were sitting around doing nothing. And Ken had approached me, Ken Golden from Laser's Edge, and he was like, I'd love to record you. What are you doing? Like, what's going on with you? Still doing the Phineas Gage thing? What's happening with that? And the second album was already done. And I was like, well, I'm kind of out of that. And I kind of got the vibe that Chris wanted to go back to Echolin. I think it all just kind of lined up, and it was a mess. It was really not a nice ending to the whole thing.
Oh, really?
It was really horrible. Yeah. And I was,
that's not cool.
it wasn't cool. Oh, so that happened. And then I just went, well, I'll sign with you and I'll do that album. That's when we got Vic Stevens, and, the whole thing started to roll. And then from there, I stayed with Ken. So after Ripe, then we got Michael Manring. So that was when McGill, Manring, Stevens thing happened.
That's when that happened. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I just kept rolling with it. So Michael, we kind of hired him for the first album. Ken said to me, who do you want as a bass player if you could get anybody? I said, well, what's Mike Manring doing? Because I knew him from Michael Hedges and all that.
Okay.
And he's like, I don't know. We'll contact him. And he was like, yeah, I'm up for it. So we sent him all the music. And we did it in 2 days. I mean, Vic and I had been rehearsing this stuff at Vic's place, and that's where we recorded it. So we did it in 2 days. And then we started. I said, well, what do we do now? I remember calling Ken on the phone. I'm going like, well, what do we do now? We're done. He goes, I don't know. Just do anything. Make it up. Record it. So We did a whole extra day of stuff where I was writing quick stuff and then we were just improvising. And that was that album. Then Mike said, well, where are the gigs? And I said, oh, so this is kind of like a group thing. He goes, yeah, absolutely. So it became a group.
Right. Now, what was that? At one point, though, with Michael, I saw you with Ritchie DeCarlo on drums.
Yes. Now that came a little bit later. We did 3 albums as McGill, Manring, Stevens. There's one called Addition by Subtraction.
Yes.
Controlled by, yes, thank you.
Controlled by Radar.
Controlled by Radar was the second one. And then there was one called What We Do, which was actually jazz standards that we kind of definitely redid. They don't sound like standard versions. And there's a bonus live disc on that we did, Chris, from one of the tours. So when you buy that, it's like there's a live show, which is, from what I remember, was really cooking. And then that kind of fell off. I kind of got to a point where I was like, I don't feel like doing this, recording music and touring, and just kind of done with it. I'm really tired of it. It was a lot of leg work and it was a lot of running around. And this is around the time I met Meredith. And Meredith, Ritchie and I knew, at least I knew Ritchie, and I think he knew of me through Joe DeLuca and all. Right. He contacted me and I was like, I'm through with all this, and I was in a cover band with my friends. And he's like, I'm done with it. I'm like, done with this. And Ritchie wrote me or called me and said, what are you up to? What are you doing? I said, to be honest with you, I'm doing a lot of nothing. And he's like, well, why don't we get together and play? And I said, all right, I'll get back to you. And I remember going back to Meredith going like, I don't know. He seems like a nice guy. I know he's a great player. I don't know about this. And she wisely went, why don't you just go over there? So it's a night. Right. You go over, put your amp in the car, whatever. I'll watch TV, see where it goes. So I did. It's a funny story, actually. I go to Ritchie's place. Now, he's got his own studio. At that time, it was like in a back shed. He had it all kitted out. Now, he had all the mics going. He was recording everything. So I set up my amp. We're talking, and he's recording it.
Right.
Right. So we just start playing. And Chell Benner, I think, was on bass. Do you remember Chell? Benner?
I do remember. Yep.
Okay, so he was playing bass. I think those guys did the Richie Kotzen gig for a while back in the 80s or whatever it was. So anyway, he recorded all of it, and we were all jazzed about it. And Ritchie goes, oh, I recorded a lot of this. It's all recorded. Nice. I go, what, are you kidding me? So part of the first Freakzoid album is that. And we would just
was that jam.
That jam. So 2 or 3 of those tunes are from basically setting up, taking the standby off and going, nah, 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 and we just edited. So Ritchie and I still work together. I mean, that was 2006. So there were 2 Freakzoid albums. Then we hooked up with Percy. And in fact, Percy Jones from Brand X guested on one. And so did Michael Manring. We got Michael to come do a few things for us too. And I made a solo fretless album. Ritchie did that. So Ritchie and I were kind of like joined at the hip since 2006. So on and off, we do things.
I was going to ask you about the fretless because I remember distinctly that you did a performance in New York.
Yes.
I forget the name of the show. It was a definitive show.
It was,
and I remember the venue because I had played that venue before. I was like, oh, Scott's in that venue. And you were doing the fretless. So Ritchie producing that?
He just I think somebody said there's this fretless festival. Chris, you probably think I'm following you around every damn venue. Like you play a venue and then I follow you.
Well, I play the venue and then you come in and show everyone how it's actually done.
I'm stalking you, for Christ's sakes. So we played it and. It was only me and Ritchie was like, oh, we'll do something. I don't know. I'll just bring this electronic thing. And we just we pieced together something really crazy. And we just went up there and played. I think Dave Fizinski and, that whole crew was there.
Right.
And Vigier had contacted me and go, oh, you won some contest or something. I think Ritchie and I left. We didn't stick around. We had to leave. So we left. And then I guess they announced that I won a guitar. So that's how I started with Vigier a while ago, but I play their fretless guitar, It's superb. But there's fretless stuff on everything I've done since Controlled by Radar.
Oh, really?
Okay. So since 2002, every album that I've done there's some kind of fretless guitar on it, whether it's acoustic or electric or whatever.
Wow. What are your feelings towards it? Is it something that, you know, is there a preference, or is it something that, oh, this is a nice color?
That's it.
Okay.
But I practice on the fretless. I don't even practice on a fretted guitar anymore. I have a little cheap acoustic that my friend Lou Flacci converted to fretless. It's just a cheapy little classical, and that's what I practice on. It's like right over there. I go and watch TV and practice on the fretless.
Really?
It's high action. I like it because there's no sustain. It's like a drum, so
Right.
your picking has to get like correct. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense, and it was perfect because I was going to ask about your technique. It's one of the things that I've always been fascinated by, and obviously you're a composer, so it's not all about your technique, but in order to play what you play, there's a certain amount of technique that you got to have. So where did that start with you? Your picking is extremely articulate, but where did that come from for you? Was there an emulation, or was it something that you just looked at and said, I already hear what I need to hear, and this is how I'm going to be able to execute it?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story because I started out playing blues rock, so I didn't have any it's like it was like playing like Hendrix, so it didn't require a lot. And when I came up, like you and I were talking before, I came up at that time where it was like all of a sudden the technical thing for rock guitar was higher, and for fusion, I wanted to play fusion, and I'm like, well, you can't do that without technique. I mean, it's just not. There's no Eric Clapton version of a fusion guitar player. It doesn't. I love Clapton, but there's no slow hand fusion guitar. Right. It doesn't work like that. So I'm like, okay. I guess it was like McLaughlin. I heard. He's always been one of my favorites. And it was Alan Holdsworth and Pat Martino, I guess, were like the three. Pat Martino is more like a jazz, but for me, I'll tell you what really happened. I used to really like Alan Holdsworth, and I was really kind of in that head when I was from 20 for about 10 years, was really into that thing, the trio thing that he did, really. But I noticed that in the guitar sound, it didn't work for my technique. Like I wanted to play with the pick, and that dark, sustained sound it's made for legato playing.
Right, and you're talking about that like mid-range kind of,
and I hated it. And I hated it. I was like, this is not working, because I would dial that in, and then I would be like, and use the plectrum. I'm like, it sounds like crap.
Wow,
This sounds horrible. And I was like, I can't do this. I got this amplifier. Chris Ike had an endorsement deal. We went to NAMM, and they were called Koch amps, Koch or Cook or whatever they are. I got one, and that was it. Like the best guitar sound was like controlled by radar. I just got the Koch, and I'm like, this thing has high end. And you can hear all the picking, and it sustains. It's perfect. It's not too overdriven, and it didn't have that oboe with a sponge in it, like oh.
Right. There's a particular vowel sound that makes. I know what you're talking about. Right?
I hate it. I mean, I know it's a great sound.
No, but I'm fascinated to hear that you hate it. I'm fascinated by this.
I don't like it because it only allows you, and granted, people that play that, they have a certain technique that they're going to use. It works for that.
Right.
It's just not my bag. And I realize it's like, I can't play percussively. I like pick attack.
Right.
Those folks to me seem like they want to get rid of the attack.
Exactly.
That's not what I want to do. It's funny. And they always mention saxophone. It's like, I don't know. Every saxophonist I ever heard that I liked had a lot of attack. I mean, Sonny Stitt's a lot of attack. Barker. Right. I don't hear like, I don't really hear that, what they're playing.
Yeah.
Just my point, just for me. But that's, And then in terms of developing it, I really got into it. Like when Yngwie came out and all, it's like, wow, if I want to play a rock gig, even I got to have chops. I mean, I can't, the bar is going up, and I always liked that sound. So when I went to university, I studied with Tom Giacobetti, and he was real. We did all the violin stuff. So we did all the Paganini Caprice, the Dance. We did all of them, the Kreutzer, everything, the plectrum. And then when I went to Dennis, we just further developed that. So it kind of comes from a classical place, but jazz too. Like, when you listen to Cannonball Adderley or Eric Dolphy, or you listen to McCoy Tyner or Coltrane or something, to keep up with those folks.
Or even someone like Art Tatum, with
right. That, exactly. And I used to transcribe his solos for Dennis. And it's like, well, I got to get, this isn't going to work unless my technique is, and I find that just by listening to those people, Chris, that helped a lot. Like just getting that sound in your head. And then when you go to your instrument, you're like, okay, it's a matter of just developing that.
Right.
So the people I listened to were generally the flurry of notes kind of people to develop that.
The density, the waves of sound.
Correct.
Correct. And using that technique. And I always, one of the things that which I still do to this day is, when I watch these little instructional clips that you have posted on YouTube, and sometimes you're not even plugged in. It's just you and the guitar, and I can still hear everything you're playing.
That's great.
And there's a sense of the precision is what I found really fascinating, because there's a consistency in that precision. It's always great. There, and it's as you said, it's a kind of precision that could work in almost any situation. Because how many times has this happened where you show up to a gig and say it's a traveling gig. I know I do a lot of fly dates, and I show up and it's like I look and it's like, that wasn't the amp I asked for, but it's the amp I got.
Yeah.
So was there a point in your technical development that you wanted to transcend the idea of what the apparatus was, of projecting that? In other words, doesn't matter what I play through, I'm always going to be able to present who I am.
By the way, that's a really great question. And you and I share the same experiences. I was flying around. It's like, oh, a JC 120. Oh, God, this or that, polytone amp, whatever. And you have to sound good. There's no, I've got my sound. I need my gear. And the problem was when I was younger, very interesting. When I was younger, I was into that stuff. I was the guy pulling out, when I had been playing a couple years, and of course I'm reading Guitar Player magazine and I'm pulling out my pickups and I'm resoldering and all this. And I'm like, you know what? This is all, pardon the expression, it's all fucking bullshit. Because all it's doing is taking me away from playing. And I had made a thing where I was like, I just want to play well. I figure, if I just keep practicing hard, whatever amp I play through or whatever rig, I can do something with it and it'll work. And you're absolutely right. When you're on the road, you're a working musician. You don't have time to go, I know I'm offending famous players or fans.
No, it's so good.
I don't have time to make sure it's the right battery.
Right.
Or the right angle of the whatever, or my action is a little low or high. There's no time for that. It's just you have to be able to play. And it was liberating. It was like, I don't need my sound. What is that anyway? I don't know. It's your hands. It's your hands.
It's your hands. And I mean, your sound, I think, is always here. It's in your head. Like, what you want it to sound like. But I have always been the believer that the generation should come from here.
Totally. Absolutely.
And whatever you're through. Now, that's not to say that, if you're given a crate amp and, it's like, this is all we got, good luck. Not to say there isn't going to be a struggle. You're going to have to kind of fighting it a little bit.
And you want good tools. It's not like you deliberate. If you're a photographer, you don't want to go out with like, I don't know, an old disposable camera or something like that. You want some good tools, but at the same time, if that was always available, if you're Ansel Adams or something, you can get good photography if you have like.
Well, that's the perfect point. If you're a good photographer, then
it's working. And many of the album, to be honest with you, Chris, there were times where I was, as the English say, skint. I had no money. So many of those albums we were just talking about, I had a PV Bandit. I put it on top of a 412 cabinet. I remember doing a gig in Baltimore. This is funny. I was with Phineas Gage. I had a Peavey. It was like, I got nothing, right? So I had a Peavey, and I put it on top of a cheap 412. And people were like laughing. You know how people come up to the gig and they're laughing before the show. You put your stuff up and they're like guys, nerdy guys up front going, "Oh, look at this crap! Look at this clown!" Right? And they're looking at my PV and all this. And then we did the show, and then afterwards they're like, "Hey, that PV sounded great, man.
Hey, can I carry that for you?" Yeah. You see, that's the point. It's, and I've said this before, and I know I'm sure I'd come under a lot of fire for this, but sometimes and I know it's a marketing thing. Obviously, like music manufacturers, equipment manufacturers, they have to make money, so they're going to market things a certain way.
Of course.
But again, if you spend $5,000 on gear and you're not working on your craft, you sound like somebody not working on their craft through $5,000 worth of gear.
Correct. We used to. Go ahead.
Well, there's somebody who's been working on their craft can plug into a $250 amp that probably had to be resoldered just to turn on, and it's great. Yeah,
amazing.
Great.
Yeah, I used to laugh. I don't know about you, but we used to do gigs, and we used to go look at the person's car. And if they drove up in a really cruddy car, it's like, that's a player. And sure enough, they're like, monster. If somebody drove up in like a Lexus, it'd be like, forget it.
Well, I feel better. I feel better about my smashed up car now. All right, good. Now I can wear that as a badge. I got dents all over it.
but it is true. I think you're absolutely right. And to be honest with you, we were talking a little earlier, and there's just so many overdrive pedals, this, that. I can't, and I'm a trained musician. I can't hear the difference. It's like, that's a Klon Centaur. It sounds great. Why is it worth 10 grand? I don't get it. It's like, just get an overdrive. I get it if you got money, but I can't relate to it, to be honest with you. I like good gear, but
I love the fact that you said that, because I used to get kind of embarrassed, because I'd go in and friends would be like, check out this pedal. Check this out, man. You're going to be amazed. Yeah. And I'd plug it in. I'd be like, okay.
It's great.
I don't know what to say, because I don't know if I almost feel that I have no aural palate, but I do, because I know when I'm working with my guitar, okay, this is what I want it to sound like.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, check out the 152K
right. Yeah.
The bonus pedal switch, and it's true bypass, and it does this, and by the way, it'll do your dishes on Wednesday.
Exactly. And you're hitting it. You're going, is this on?
Yeah.
What's it worth? This is like, what, they want $2 grand for this, right? Oh,
the thing is,
can't you hear the germanium thing besides? It's like, dude, I don't know, man.
I have no idea. I just want to plug in and play, and it's the same thing. When I've got floor modules that are programmable, which of course help when you're doing a fly date or doing something like that. Right. But I have no attention span for programming, and I need to send the signal here. And they're like, oh, well, you can split the signal and it'll go here, and then this will happen, and then you get to. I'm like,
anything that gets between me and the music, I'm not interested in. And that's why I picked Joe DeLuca up front a long time ago. We go to producers and all. We're going to record. Oh, well, first I'm going to take a dry signal, then I'm going to do it. Literally. I mean, a very talented recording engineers. I went to Joe. He's like, I don't know, just set up and play. I'll put a mic in front of your amp. I'm like, sold.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing.
And that's why I love playing with Ritchie, because it's like, plug into this, see what happens. Oh, that's cool. There's no my sound, and we just plug into anything that's in his studio. He's a gearhead. He's like, try this, let's try something, and then it just take the music from there, rather than all this. I need my sound stuff.
Right. Which I think at the end of the day can detract from.
It's funny, and not to cut on people that are really into that. Their albums tend to sound the same year after year after year. I'm like, oh, I need my sound. It's like, it sounds like the stuff you were doing in '81, man. I guess if that's what you're after, that's cool, but it's not for me.
Right. And your sound is always, it's not only evolving, but it's taking from where you are at that space and time.
Correct.
And
I'll plug into anything. I mean, if I can, that's why we were talking about before. It's like, oh, plug me into a ring modulator, plug me into a phaser. That's great. Plug me into an orange amp. Let's try the Marshall. Let's try this. Great. Let's just track with it. If it works at the day, at the time, wonderful. I'll try anything. And that's why I think the guitar sound changes, with me. It's changed
do you
a lot.
Do you find that with, like you were saying, if you plugged into an orange or a Marshall, do you play to the amps?
It's a good question.
Thing, or are you always in that, this is what I do? Or do you find the amp sometimes, just influences some of the ideas? Like a ring modulator would certainly influence.
Of course.
I
think it's a bit of both. I think I plug into an amp and go, can I do my thing through this right now?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yes. Okay.
Well, no, I can't tell you how exciting it is to hear you say that, because that was always my trip.
Yeah.
I always said, if I can't plug into anything and make something happen, then I need to go back to the woodshed.
And that's why I practice with a $200 fretless piece of junk Chet Atkins Epiphone guitar, because if I can make music on that, I'm okay. I'm probably all right.
So are you do you still have a regimen? Like, do you still, like, what is your thing? Like, daily regimen? We're still on the technique thing, so I was just curious.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm so busy doing like theoretical papers and stuff that I think what I'm doing is I'm just practicing in my head, and then I just pick up the guitar and I just do that. But do I have, like, first I do my tremolo and then my arpeggio? I don't.
Right.
I used to do things that way, and sometimes I still do. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, let me work on that. But not so much. I normally practice the way I used to practice, but towards writing. So it's like, I got a record to do, so let me try all the arpeggios you could do there, or so I make that go to the material I need to do.
Right. So the material you're writing is dictating where your technique needs to be.
Correct. It dictates the vocabulary, the type of scale or arpeggio or any of that stuff. Right. Yeah, I don't have a one size fits all. Every time the dominant chord comes, I play a melodic minor up. No,
right.
I don't do that.
Do you write when you're composing? Do you make any kind of conscious effort to perhaps write beyond your technique?
Always.
Okay.
In fact, all the stuff I've ever done is you write it and you're like, holy shit, how am I going to play on that?
Right. And then you figure it out. You find your way. And isn't that where your voice comes from, right?
In my opinion, for me, yes. Otherwise, you start to write, no offense to famous players, you write to your strengths, and it sounds the same and very boring. Or you have an exciting tune, and then all of a sudden the solo comes and it's one chord or something. And it's like, okay, that's so that you can put your 5-finger 12-note tappy. And I'm not down with that. It's just not for me. It's not for me. Hey, it's a really complex tune. And then all of a sudden, let's just do G minor 7 so that I can put my 8-octave lick in. And it's not for me. It's just not my thing.
Right. And that it's an interesting rabbit hole. So have you composed a piece, and I'm going to ask even just recently, with changes in it that you had to step away from for a minute and say,
yeah.
And I'm not even just from a technical standpoint, because I mean, your technique is, unbelievable. But I mean, just from a standpoint of, I've got to make these changes and I've got to make it music. I've got to do all these things. So are you in that world where you write outside of that ability?
Come all the time. Everything I've ever done at whatever point, I can't do. I had to practice to play the changes or whatever. With some exceptions, but mostly, yeah. Like even when I think back to the first album, the Hand Farm album, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of changes. And I'll tell you what really helped it for me was playing trio, because there's no keyboard. So all of your major scale things, it's like, that sounds like crap over this. So I need to figure out scales or ways of playing that the listener can hear the changes and it doesn't sound generic. And it's kind of like you construct the scale or the vocabulary for the tune.
So your construction of scales, the vocabulary, is designed specifically for that
tune. Yeah, I don't have like every time I see a major, I play Liddy, and I don't I don't do that because people to me that play that way sound like it, and I don't like that.
Where do you go? Where do you go? Like when you see B flat major 7,
right? I don't know. It depends upon the tune. It depends what comes before and after it,
right. Whether it's a functioning
right,
chord.
or if it's just B flat major 7 for a year,
right?
Yes, absolutely. It's like I try to look at now. Look, as a gigging musician, you have to plug in and play, and that's a different thing. I'm talking about being the creative album making areas. Oh yeah, I would go. That tune, I generally play these things. And on this tune, I'm going to play these things. And that would keep it interesting every night, too.
Right.
And non-repetitive.
Exactly. Which I've always found fascinating about you is that there's always this sense of searching, which is a leading question to another topic I wanted to talk about, the rabbit hole that we're hitting, is there seems to be this, and it's an amazing art, and there's a beauty to it, but there's a price to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking on that topic. You have this desire to constantly push this envelope, which is completely your world. It's not, there's not an agenda. I'm assuming there's not an agenda of like, oh, I'm going to push this envelope because I'm going to blow the world in half. It's your own personal voyage of where can I go next? Is there something else to discover, et cetera, et cetera. In that context, have you found in your career, in your life, that there has been pushback or what I call a man without a nation? Do you ever feel that way where you're kind of like, I'm kind of alone here?
Yes. It's not just, and I think I it's getting back to what we were talking about in terms of even gear too. It's like, oh, well, I'll just plug into this or whatever. And that influences the sin. For me, it's not interesting. Are there licks that I played on that Phineas Gage album that I still would pick up the guitar? Yeah, I'm sure there are a couple things, but it's about constructing your own vocabulary for playing music. And just, you're right, it's constantly searching. To me, it's not fun unless you're progressing. I like to listen to each album and go, yeah, that's where I was in 99, and that's where I was in 2003. That's about where I was. That was about at the pinnacle of where I was, and I'm fine with that. I have no regrets when I listen to this stuff.
Right.
But you're right, you do. I don't think what I do falls into any particular category, not because it's particularly avant-garde, but I guess it's because it's personal. Like my music, it has avant-garde elements in some areas, but not as crazy as the people in that thing. And it has aspects of fusion or whatever, and aspects of this and that and the other. But there was a composer named Olivier Messiaen that I used to like a lot. And one thing I really liked about his work is it was very personal. Now, a school of thought never grew up around Messiaen. You know what I mean? Like, people really dug his music, but it wasn't like people copied it, because it was so personal, right, that it was like it didn't lend itself. So I think for me, yeah, I think definitely I don't think I fall into, and it's weird when I talk to guitar players, I can't really identify with what they're doing usually, not because I think I'm better or marvelous or anything. I just think I've designed my own little personal world around playing the guitar.
Okay.
And it just doesn't really conform to, I don't know, what's out there or what is happening or isn't. Not because I think I'm above it or anything. I don't. I just feel like I'm off to the side a little bit.
Now, has there been a situation where that has presented itself in a bizarre situation? In other words, there was an expectation.
Yeah.
And then you came into the situation and they were like, whoa.
Yeah. When we put out Controlled by Radar, I remember it clearly. Now, the stuff up to that point had been 97, 99. It still had a little bit of that. It still had the Holdsworth sheen on it from like
Okay.
the back. So there was still a bit of that, but it was branching out, when I did addition by subtraction and all. And Control by Radar was much freer. I mean, that's a double album, and we were doing some fretless things. We were doing some things with a lot of effects, stuff where I would play the bass line on the guitar with a pedal, and Michael would play the upper part. There was all kinds of acoustic stuff, ECM kind of stuff, but always ours. And I remember the reviews. I mean, I remember people on, Fusion news groups are like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, what are you doing? It sounds like Stockhausen. It sounds horrible." Because I had stopped doing, I guess, and not. I'll have to go on a limb. It's, I appreciate people that really follow Alan Holdsworth, but you can't win with them because you're not the guy, so you're a jerk. And if you're in the style, then you're a jerk. Like, you can't win. Like,
right.
And I was trying to do something unique with it. I was trying to not ape it, but try to bring something different, take it as a part of my thing and work it. And I got email from people that were really into his stuff. Like, I don't know, like, what are you doing? Like, this is crap. This new album stinks. What are you up to? And it's like, there's no pleasing people, it's just
right. But how did you process that? Was that something did that affect you, or did you say, no, this is my path?
No, it made me more convinced that that stuff was done.
That's fascinating to me. I find that like amazing, because I know that I would have second guessed myself. I would have sat there and go, "Oh man, I'm losing my core." Or if I had a core, I don't know, but I'd have that anxiety.
Well, I always got it from anybody anyway. So, like, for instance, when I was in Phineas Gage and all, it was like, "Oh, this guy's just a Holdsworth clone." Like, they never really listened to the stuff. They just went, "Oh, this is a Holdsworth clone." And I remember a lot of reviews from overseas and in the States like that. That guy's just a clone or whatever it was. And then this guy's a Holdsworth clone or whatever it is. And it was like, damned if I do that, right? And then when I start to branch out, it was like, "Oh, what are you doing?"
Right.
And it's like, well, no, it made me more convinced. It was like, and I remember having a discussion with Michael Manring about it a long time ago. And he said something interesting. And it really resonated with me because I was already on the way out of that, and getting Michael, playing with Michael and playing with Ritchie, guys like that made me like, okay, I'm completely out. But I remember Michael said to me, he goes, I knew Jocko, and he goes, I was really into Jocko, and when I was young, and he goes, I would start to listen to recordings. I'm paraphrasing this. I'm trying to remember. And he would say, I listen to recordings of myself, and I hear a Jocko lick, and then it's something else, and then a Jocko lick. He goes, the stuff in between the Jocko licks was me.
Huh.
So I was like, get rid of the Jocko licks.
Wow.
I'm there.
Yeah, I guess I think about that too, because, here in my world, I'm known as the Yngwie clone, because I do an Yngwie tribute. I do all of that. And, if I do anything other than that, people are like,
what are you doing? You can't win.
What the hell are you doing? Why are you doing that? Wait a minute.
And that's
You're
my
bending
thing.
a note? Like, why are you bending a note?
Why are you bending a note? Right. And that's my thing. My thing is like, you might as well do what you want to do, because, unless you're one of the fortunate people that get a sound that people like. But the problem is those folks are hemmed in too. Like, Eric Johnson can't branch out. He's got to do that thing.
He's got to do that thing.
For 30, 40 years. And I'm sure he loves it, and it's a really great thing. But it's like, I think sometimes you're a victim of your own success in that. It's like, don't change. We like that. Give me Cliffs of Dover. Keep doing that. Right. And I'm sure whatever. For some people that works. I mean, as for me, and there's nothing wrong with the Yngwie tribute. Look, if somebody said, Scott, do a tribute to Hendrix or whatever, I'd love to go out and play that stuff and play it authentically,
Right. But that would be a moment in time. It wouldn't define you.
No.
Right. Exactly.
No.
And the other thing moving into that whole thing, which again is something else that's amazing to me with you, is your authorship. And I wanted to briefly bring up this thing with the Schoenberg lectures in Vienna.
Yeah.
I really have been dying to know how you present that when you go in and do that, because that's such an honor to be asked to do that.
Yeah, that was bucket list stuff. And the shame of it was, I mean, there was a lot of tumultuous stuff going on with the family at the time. Nothing like between us, like we were in a problem,
Right.
but we had outside things that were pressing on us. And the gentleman that invited me actually invited me back, who was the director. And he wanted to do a paper with me on it. And it was, I think Oxford was interested in it. And I just didn't have the time. And the lectures that I had done, they wanted to publish it in their, in their journal. And I just didn't have time to prepare the text at the time. But no, it was a huge, huge thing. I had submitted a paper topic and abstract and, about that topic to the center. And it was like, oh, this is very interesting. So I did the lecture and they loved it. And they said, you got to come back. We're doing something next March and we really want you to present a whole lecture, like an hour.
Wow.
At that point, I was just doing a 20, your usual academic thing, 20-minute paper, 20-minute questions, or half hour, whatever it was. But they wanted me to do a whole evening based on my thing, and then they were going to have a concert. So I did that, and that was very frightening because there were some very learned people, from the University of Vienna and Austrian composers, guild and all that, and they were sitting in a room with me very intimately, listening to me speak. And we were like crammed. There was no distance. It was very, and some brilliant composers and some brilliant minds asking me questions and all. It was intimidating.
Yeah, but how amazing is that?
Yeah. I didn't think I was going to get into that. I mean, I've written books, on guitar, but like, more quote unquote advanced stuff. And then I branched into it and I got really into it. And I'm still finishing this study guide on Howard Hanson's text from the 60s. So I never thought I'd really be into it, but I don't know. Somehow I fell into it.
Yeah. So you have quite a few.
Yeah.
And there's one I just saw recently on social media that you have. What's it called?
Yeah, well, there's the Howard Hanson thing is pretty interesting because it's like 300 and something pages of like mirroring scales and
that's it,
all this kind of nonsense. And I always wanted to I just finished the rough draft, actually, Chris, this morning, so I've got the second part. But I like that kind of nerdy stuff, and I don't know, I discover things and I publish them myself. I don't really go through academic journals anymore. It's just I don't have time. I just want to get material out.
Well, we're going to put a link to the way in the description of our show. We'll put a link on how people can get all of the stuff that you've ever published and have
nice.
Available to them. I think that's important because I did open up a little bit of that latest one. And I've been fascinated with the mathematics and I've always felt like you've got two universal languages, mathematics and music.
Mm-hmm.
And you're one of the artists that have always been able to, at least to me, studying your literature, I've seen that kind of come to light, this kind of connection of these two worlds that really kind of bring everything together.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, the way my mind works anyway.
That's cool. That's great. I mean, it comes down to so many things. And by the way, the guys like Alan Holdsworth were interested in that stuff too, Coltrane, through Coltrane and through whatever, in terms of jazz, etc. The people that a lot of people have been interested in it, but to me, it has direct application on the guitar. Like I do all this stuff on the guitar. Like I don't do it on the keyboard. I got the guitar out. So when I write music, even if it's orchestral music, I'm thinking guitar.
Right. And you just completed a violin.
There's a concerto that's just
concerto.
Done. Yeah.
Would have put a link to that as well.
Yeah.
Half hour
great.
Long. And folks, you compose that all on the guitar.
Folks, don't let it scare you away.
Well, you were saying it. No, I mean, you were saying that it's that your son Declan is a fan. Like
he loves, and I've written a number of paraphrases for Declan. Like in other words, there's a short Mozart first movement of a sonata that I kind of recomposed for him. I did a series of. I remember I think I sent you a while ago. There's like 70 variations on the Goldberg variations that I did. I recomposed them and made them mirror and flip around. And he loves them. He loves Baroque music. So it's kind of a chance for me to keep my compositions going, my head, and then my, do something for my son too,
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I don't know how that came. It wasn't like I was younger and I was like, oh, I'm going to get into all this academic stuff. It really wasn't, never that person.
Right. But you've done it, and it's, is that an outlet that you feel really good with?
Yes. But it's, for me, I've been doing too much of it. I think I got really into it, and I'm going to get back into the guitar now that the Hanson thing and the concerto are done. It's like, I think I'm just going to get back to the guitar now and take a break from that stuff for a little bit.
So is there a possible new album in the works?
I want to do something. I want to do a McCoy Tyner tribute album. Now,
Wow.
McCoy Tyner's been one of my heroes. And if anything comes out in my playing, it's probably that. I mean, I ripped that off to the max. I really do. I mean,
Fourths, anyone? Fourths?
Yeah.
Fourths? Yeah. We'll have some fourths.
I'm really, really into him. The rhythm and the feel and the technique too. I mean, talk about fast playing. Yeah. So, although it won't be any McCoy Tyner tunes, the funny thing is it'll be a tribute disc to him, but there will be no McCoy Tyner tunes. So
wow.
So, and Ritchie, I want to get Ritchie involved in it. So Ritchie will probably be on it, but I'm already doing some prep for it, just kind of thinking. So that's probably next. So look out for, it'll be clean guitar. It'll be guitar synths. It'll be all sorts of stuff.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And the other guitar thing, I guess the most recent was doing all the classical paraphrases, all that list and all that stuff that I did on Bandcamp. So there's a mini album of me playing, Debussy with the plectrum.
Right.
Bach, Debussy. No backing tracks, by the way, solo. There's no
just solo.
Yes. So there's that too.
That's amazing. And real quick on that, when you're doing that, you're doing your arrangement, right? Because it's a plectrum,
right? So
you've got to arrange this. What's your prep time before you actually hit the record button?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends. For instance, I did the whole Wagner, the Tristan prelude. That took a while to get all the voices out with that. I mean, that's basically, that's a full orchestra.
Right.
So it's like trying to get your hands around all the voice movements. Yeah. And the left hand is the tricky thing. It's the right hand too, but it's the left hand.
Right.
And I did a Bach convention on there to prove you can play counterpoint with a pick.
Yes.
And I don't transpose anything into like guitar friendly keys. Like I did a Beethoven, I did the Adagio sonata from the Sonata Pathétique. It's in A flat. It's in A flat. I don't put it in G or A.
You're doing it in A flat. I don't care. You're doing it in A flat.
Correct.
I think that's great. No, it's great.
What? Because it sounds like crap in the other keys. There's a reason people.
There's a reason it was
keys.
Composed in that key. Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
That's why I hated classical guitar. I love it as an art, but it's like I can't do that, man. Everything's like in G and D. Screw that, man. I can't.
I don't need no open strings.
Exactly, and especially when you start playing jazz, everything's in E flat anyway. So
that's true. E flat or B flat, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
one final thing. Speaking of classical music, I want to mention with technique that just to talk is, we're saying, hey, is there anything rather whatever? A long time ago, I remember reevaluating my technique. I don't know if you've done this. You probably did. Everybody does this, I guess.
Yep. And
I remember being like, the left hand is the problem, actually. It's not my right hand. My left hand is a problem. And yeah, because a lot of people think when you're playing with a pick fast, you're like, oh, it's my pick. And they do tremolos. They sit there and go blah, 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 like this. And I'm like, it's my left hand can't keep up. And I discovered something for me. I don't know about, see what you think of this, is I studied upright bass technique. And they don't use 3 and 4 together because it's the weakest relationship. You can't play an instrument like that, and use your 3rd and 4th. Guitar, classical guitar, we're taught all this like everything's equal, and it's not. This is weak. So I got rid of, like, I don't. So if I'll play 1, 2, and 4 or I'll play 1, 2, and 3. But I rarely play 1, 3, and 4.
That's interesting.
And my technique took off.
Really? Huh.
Once I jettisoned all that Segovia nonsense, one finger per fret, and I'm like, why don't I have any chops? And then I discover, you look at Yngwie, he don't play like that.
No.
You look at Holdsworth, there were those guys, McLaughlin, they don't play like that.
Interesting.
And I would say it was the upright thing. I studied a bit of that, and I'm like, these guys play 1, 2, and 4 like this.
So
and
guys like,
go ahead.
I was going to ask, like guys like, if you got guys like Paul Gilbert that are like big,
but that's not happening,
right? Because it's one.
You could do it easier with 1, 2, and 4.
1, 2, and 4.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Because then you've got the, you can even do the diminished.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Because the big stretch is here, and this is weak. So I don't care how many times people go, oh, I just practiced doing this. By the way, that's how Robert Schumann blew his hand out.
Really?
Yeah. You didn't know that? Yeah, he was practicing to be a virtuoso, and he was like, I wanted my 3 and 4 a week. And he was doing all kinds of stuff, and he blew the tent because it's not designed. Our human hand is not designed for 3 and 4. It's not designed to go like this.
Wow.
It's not designed. And luckily for him, luckily for us, he did, because now we know him as a composer, but he was on the way to becoming a concert pianist. And he ruined his hand because he didn't get it.
Oh,
he thought like, oh, everything has to be equal, like Segovia. And it's like, no, man, it doesn't operate like that, especially for what we're trying to do. And I would try to play like that Art Tatum stuff. I'm like, you can't do it with this classical guitar kind of technique. It just doesn't work, man. Violinists, if you look at them, they play like this. They've got a small neck. They play like this.
Right.
And upright players play like this.
Interesting.
And here's a quick test for anybody out there. Take the Jimmy Page lick. I don't have a guitar here. I would do it for you. But the that 70s lick.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you try that, do that real quick. Right. Now you do it with the 2 and the 3.
Yeah. You
great.
can feel
it works. It works great. Now try it with 3 and 4.
Start to feel the fatigue.
You feel the fatigue. Now try it 1, 2, and 4, and then put 3 on the B string. You could do it for a year. It's like because your hand doesn't fatigue.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because when you were talking about re-evaluating your technique years ago, when I started to get into the economy picking,
right?
And the purpose of that for me was to, and it's interesting, we talked about this earlier about eliminating pick noise, right? But what I found with it, what I learned from it, was the idea of breathing and relaxation, almost like a sports car. The faster it goes, the more it hugs the road. And I found that even with alternate picking, just relaxing.
Yeah, but see, you can accent where you want now. That's why it's good.
Because I can relax, and
that's correct.
But I love this idea that you're talking about, this kind of, concentrating on the strengths of the fingers that work.
Well, do me a quick favor. Play 1, 3, 4 all the way across, or 3, 4, 3, 1 and go all the way down, or something like that, or 1, 3, 4, and just do it all the way across.
1, 3, 4.
Yeah, regular old 1, 3, 4.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'll do it here.
Pain in the ass, isn't it? Now do that with 1, 2, and 4. Now do the exact same frets.
1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 4.
Now
put
the 2 where it was. Put the 2 where the 3 was. So instead of the 3, put the 2 there, and then put your pinky. Well, no, don't do the stretch. Do the regular.
That?
Put 4 on there, right?
Oh, like that.
Then you can play like the Dickens.
Right, like getting back to what you were talking about.
Right.
Oh, wow. Or even this. That's all 1, 2, 4. Right?
That's just 1, 2, 4. So it just replaced, instead of putting 1, 3, 4, even on a regular guitar position, like bum, 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 do it like that. Get rid of 3.
So you're saying, like, if I was to play an A minor,
Right. That's it.
But how about a 1, 2, 3?
Same thing. That's fine too.
Okay.
But I found the 1, 2, 4. I could really yank. It's like, and I could really. Yeah, you could.
Even the tremolo.
Correct. And see.
That's awesome.
Now the reason I had to do that is
checks in the mail.
The reason I had to do that is because I realized you're talking before, what you're bringing up is really important. I needed to play fast a lot because the type of music that I was playing, I had to play with endurance.
Yes.
So rock players typically sprint. So you'll hear like whatever,
Right.
But to play like Eric Dolphy stuff or whatever for long periods of time,
yeah,
you got.
Or even the Coltrane stuff when he would find that release and it would be this just wave, and it was part of that intensity.
Correct.
It's
like you have to have your technique has to be able to last in time.
I was gonna say that, and on this last topic, I have found historically, jazz musicians their technique tends to elevate throughout their life, even as they get older. Rock musicians, it's the opposite.
Correct.
I'm not shitting on rock players. I'm a rock player myself. But have you heard that where it's like, wait a minute, I saw this guy back in 1985. And now this guy can barely get through that solo.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think it's also like an internal thing too. Because, when you're practicing and to keep the hands, in shape and feeling good, you want to have I always focus on relaxation.
Yes.
Making sure it's relaxed and I'm not over. I mean, if I'm going to dig into a note and go Robin Trower on your ass, then I'm going to dig in. But
of course.
And I think that's kind of an interesting parallel, which is I've always thought that I wanted to be more of that guy, the jazz guy that it was like a fine wine. It just got better.
Yes.
Constantly gets better.
Yeah. And it's weird because when I found that when I first started studying jazz guitar, aside from like Pat Martino and Joe Pass and all, a lot of those folks didn't have technique. Like, and I always kind of thought that jazz guitar players ought to listen to rock guitar players, or they ought to listen to like fusion players.
Right.
And they have now. It took a generation or two.
Yeah.
But, there was a stereotype of the sloppy jazz guitar player. And it was true. It was like, like the old timers like Herb Ellis and all. They were great players, but it's real sloppy. They didn't have the aesthetic of the saxophone players and the piano players, and they could never keep up with them. I remember being like, somebody would say at school, like, did you hear this Oscar Peterson thing with so-and-so on guitar? I'm like, yeah, the guitar player should get lost. He's friggin' useless, man. Yeah. It's like, he can't keep up with that dude. It's like, forget it. And I still feel that way about guitar players. I mean, we've come a long way, and I'm not saying I know this or whatever, but it's like I typically don't. I guess that's part of my thing. It's like if I had it to do over again, I'd probably play piano, although I love the guitar. But it's like the guitar player is always the weakest link in the group when it comes to jazz. They can't keep up with the sax, and they can't keep up with the piano player because they don't work on that stuff. They're somehow too cool to work on technique. That's what rock guys do.
Right.
That's that rock stuff, the rock fast thing. It's like, no, dude, your saxophone player is smoking you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So while you're listening to Grant Green, that dude's smoking you.
That guy's smoking you with like arpeggios everywhere. Come on.
Thank you.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And as always, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you and talk music and learn. And thanks for that guitar lesson, by the way. As I said, the check's in the mail. Guys, 124. 124, everyone.
124, ladies and gentlemen.
Do not be afraid of your
put away all that Paul Gilbert crap. He's a nice guy and he plays really well.
Yes,
Just don't watch him. Just don't watch him play. That'll be our moral. That'll be today's moral.
That's the
listen to the albums. Don't watch them.
Okay, children, you've heard it here first.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for letting me share this with your audience and all.
No, thank you for participating and hanging with you. It's obvious that we're going to have a part 3 because there's just so much in-depth stuff that we can continue to talk about. And again, I really want to, and I'm speaking for a lot of people I know that know you, that have studied with you. We have nothing but gratitude for the fact, because you've been doing that. You've been very instrumental in a lot of musicians, I'm sure over there in England, but even here in the States, a lot of musicians, your impact on them is immense.
Well, it's nice to hear. I never, I am basically unaware of that. So that is,
well, you're kind of the man. You're the man on the mountain, man. You're like, that's where, we need more source material. Scott's the guy.
I appreciate it, man.
I think that's phenomenal.
That's nice. Thank you.
Like I said, it's always amazing and a good feeling to have inspiration, and you provide that. And
that's nice. Thank you.
It's great, and you're very humble on top of that, which is great. So.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you and everyone. Unsung Hero Scott McGill, and we will catch up with you all soon. Keep an eye on the links below for all things Scott, including his releases, record releases, and his literature that will be available in links below. So everyone, have a great day. And you know what? Practice. 1, 2, 4, baby.
1, 2, 4.
1, 2, 4.
Or 1, 3, 4. We had it right the first time. The classical guitar people were wrong. We had it right.
Oh, there you go. That's it. All right, everyone. You guys have a great week, and stay tuned. We'll talk to you soon.